A wildfire in Western Canada grew so violently fast that it tripled in size within 3 days. And the province's own forestry minister said, and this is a direct quote, "We could have put 1,000 more helicopters and 1,000 more people on the ground, and it wouldn't have made a difference." That's how bad the Bald Range wildfire has gotten in British Columbia's Okanagan region. An 80-year-old woman died trying to escape it. More than 20,000 people have fled their homes, and Canada has now put its military on standby to help. Here's the part almost nobody is talking about. This fire isn't being driven by wind. It's being driven by something harder to fight, ground that's simply too dry to hold anything back. No guessing, no dramatizing, just the facts, the science, and the real stakes. Let's get into it. The fire, from 2 hectares to 156 square kilometers. The Bald Range wildfire broke out in British Columbia's Okanagan region and, according to Fire Information Officer Nicole Bonnet, grew explosively on a single Friday, expanding by 50 square kilometers in just 3 hours. By Monday, the British Columbia Wildfire Service confirmed the fire had grown to approximately 156 square kilometers, about 60 square miles, up from 136 square kilometers, roughly 53 square miles the day before. The fire raced toward the town of Summerland, home to about 12,000 people along the western shore of Okanagan Lake and into the surrounding community of Peachland. Summerland was ordered evacuated on Saturday night, alongside roughly 8,000 residents in and around Peachland. Local officials described conditions on the ground as, in one resident's words, pandemonium. The fire has already claimed 1 life. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed an 80-year-old woman died while trying to escape the flames near Summerland. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called her death heartbreaking in a public statement, saying his thoughts were with her family, loved ones, and everyone in her community, and pledging continued federal support for British Columbia. For the tens of thousands forced to leave, the experience has been chaotic and disorienting. One evacuee described staying with a friend in the nearby town of Penticton, saying simply, "It doesn't really seem real. I have to see it to believe it." About 10,000 homes remained under formal evacuation orders as of Monday, with an additional 3,200 homes under evacuation alerts, meaning residents there could be told to leave at any moment. British Columbia's Minister of Forests, Ravi Parmar, said 19 helicopters were assigned specifically to the Bald Range fire, but that the blaze's intensity made it essentially impossible to stop directly. His comment, about 1,000 more helicopters and 1,000 more people making no difference, wasn't an exaggeration for effect. It was a direct acknowledgement that, under these particular fire conditions, adding resources wasn't the limiting factor. Thick smoke lingering over the fire has compounded the problem, reducing visibility so severely that it's limiting the use of air tankers and water-skimming aircraft, some of the most effective tools available for slowing a fire like this one. British Columbia declared a provincial state of emergency on Saturday. Canada's Federal Defence Minister David McGuinty said the Canadian Armed Forces were in constant, direct contact with provincial officials and ready to respond the moment a formal request for military assistance came through, though as of Monday, that formal request had not yet been made. The federal government had already approved provincial requests for help with emergency shelter and accommodations for evacuees. Drop a comment and tell me, have you or anyone you know ever had to evacuate because of a wildfire? If you want more fact-checked breakdowns of disasters as they unfold, subscribe to the channel, it's free, and hitting like genuinely helps this reach more people. Let's push for 5,000 likes on this one. The science, why this fire is different from a wind-driven blaze. Most explosive wildfire growth stories involve strong wind as the primary driver, embers thrown far ahead of the fire line, flames pushed rapidly across terrain. Bald Range is a somewhat different case. According to British Columbia Wildfire Service officials, this particular blaze has been fueled primarily by extremely dry conditions, not wind. That distinction matters for how dangerous and how difficult to fight a fire actually is. Wind-driven fires can shift direction or lose intensity relatively quickly if the wind changes or dies down. A fire burning through fuel that's simply bone dry after a prolonged drought doesn't have that same natural check. Vegetation with very little residual moisture ignites more easily, burns hotter, and sustains fire spread even in relatively calm conditions, which is part of why officials specifically warned that clearer skies and more direct sunlight, not stronger wind, could actually increase fire activity in the days ahead by drying out remaining fuel even further. This isn't an isolated event for British Columbia. The province has endured a series of increasingly destructive wildfire seasons in recent years, part of a broader trend of mass evacuations and smoke events that have repeatedly spread across large parts of Canada and into the neighboring United States. Scores of wildfires have burned across British Columbia this season alone, with nearly half of them classified as out of control amid hot, windy weather layered on top of prolonged drought. The Bald Range fire is the most acute example right now, but officials have been clear that it's part of a pattern, not a one-off, and that other communities across the province could still face similar threats before the season ends. British Columbia Wildfire Service crews continue working the Bald Range Fire's perimeter, though officials have been candid that direct suppression may remain limited until conditions change. Provincial officials say firefighting costs have not yet been tallied, and the full scope of property destruction in and around Summerland remains unclear, since officials have said the affected areas are still too dangerous to enter safely. The Canadian Armed Forces remain on standby, monitoring the situation hour by hour, according to Defence Minister McGuinty, ready to deploy the moment British Columbia formally requests assistance. There's a particular kind of helplessness in a forestry minister publicly admitting that more resources wouldn't have made a difference. It's not a statement about a lack of effort, it's an acknowledgement of just how far conditions on the ground had already tipped before anyone could respond. For the families now staying with friends in Penticton, still trying to process whether their homes in Summerland and Peachland are even still standing, that admission probably won't be much comfort. But it does explain something important about wildfires like this one. Sometimes the fire isn't beaten by fighting harder. It's only slowed by the weather finally changing. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this story. Leave that comment below. Have you or anyone you know ever had to evacuate because of a wildfire? 5,000 likes on this one. Let's go. See you in the next one.